And here we are with chapter 32 of the Four Nights of the Apocalypse. In this chapter, there was a lot of dialogue. Like there was like a lot of dialogue, and there's like a lot to kind of go through because there's a lot happening in this chapter. So I'm definitely going to try to break down a lot of that for you guys, as well as give my opinions on it. But the chapter starts with pretty beautiful scenery, honestly, from Nakaba of them traveling the Dalfar or Dalfar, however you want to say it. I think I'm gonna go with Dalfar range or mountain range. And immediately off the bat, one thing that I really do like about them traveling this range and what takes place over the course of the entire chapter is the fact that they constantly emphasize how tired Nanson's is, or Nison's, however you say his name. I go with Nanson's, but how tired Nanson's is throughout the entire thing, because he does say earlier that, like, well, much earlier in the story, that he doesn't have as much stamina, or he doesn't have like as much of a hardy constitution as other people. So I kind of like that this is emphasized, a lot throughout this, whereas like Nansen really does not feel confident in his ability to make it through this journey. It's funny because all the while they're traveling, Percival is, playing with the new sword Hauser made him, even saying, he's like the Holy Knight of Justice, Percival. And I like this a lot because it really does reinforce Percival's very like childlike nature, as well as this is really important because this shows that Percival is, even though this is in a joking manner, this is also serious for Percival because he's getting acclimated to using his sword. Like this is almost like play pretend training for him, in a sense. So like I guess when he gets into an actual fight, it won't be like his true first time using this sword, since he's been swinging it around and playing with it on this entire journey. But once they get close to the peak, they do decide to rest. And while resting, they're basically talking about how it doesn't seem to be as scary as they thought it would be. And then this is when Sin starts to break down, like what all this mountain range is known for. And he says, the first thing is there are mirages. The peaks have spiritual powers to conjure up like strange events, such as like seeing your future self, or meeting a lover that you'll have like later in life. And then there's also, tales of like a village that has man-eating ogres, or like a dimensional cave that you'll never like escape from, and all that kind of stuff. So it really just shows that there's lots of different things that this mountain range has. And honestly, I feel like most of these things actually happen over the course of this chapter, like all of the things that Sin says. So I'll also, tell you guys when I believe these things also happen. So essentially, you're getting ready to go to sleep, and no one can sleep. Percival wants everybody to stay up and think of moves for his sword and stuff, which I just thought was just a funny moment. I don't know why, I just like Percival's humor and comedy a lot. I know I've said this a lot before, but like Percival reminds me so much of Goku in Dragon Ball, and I loved Dragon Ball. Dragon Ball was one of like my favorite series when I was a kid. So it's just I really do like how similar they are. But anyway, after they are asleep, Sin does hear someone calling out to him, and he goes off on his own to kind of like see what he can see. I guess I know a lot of people hate that phrase, but he goes out to see what he can see, and he runs into a girl or a bride. I'm not for sure who this character is. It's definitely not a character that I've ever seen before in Seven Deadly Sins or in this story, but this person is calling Sin to his actual name. And I believe that this could be, a future event, or a potential lover of Sin in the future, or maybe someone who just knows who Sin is. And now this is also really interesting because if you remember back, Arthur told Ironside to go find him a wife. And it's funny because Sin says that this girl is also a bride. Now, we obviously don't have, like I said, any information on this chick, but I would be willing to bet to some degree that this could potentially be a character known as Guinevere. Now, as I've said before, I'm not the most versed on all of the Arthurian lore, but I do know that Guinevere was the wife of Arthur, if I'm not mistaken, and she was also a lover of Lancelot. So this could point to Sin being Lancelot, because Guinevere would be that one thing they have in common. So I'm not for sure how Nakaba wants to do it in his own adaptation, but this girl could potentially be Guinevere, or a future version of Guinevere. Or, I mean, if you want to be different, you could say that this could potentially be the true Lady of the Lake, the one that Lancelot and Jericho went off to see. But at the same time, I feel like Sin would recognize her if that was her. But Sin doesn't know who this is. So I feel like it's Guinevere. I feel like a lot of other people would think it's also her, but we're just gonna have to wait and see. There's also a possibility that this could not be the bride of Arthur at all. This could be something totally different. But that's just kind of the running theory that I'm gonna go with for now. But basically, when Sin wakes up, he does tell them about this vision or dream or person that he saw that was definitely a mirage. And it's funny because I didn't really expect Sin to say anything to anybody. This definitely seems like a Sin thing where he would just keep it to his self. Percival does say that in his dream he's seen him play Gorin with Annie, which is his wrestling. It's funny because I believe this was like Percival seeing like himself in the future, but just didn't know it. Like that's just like a side funny thing to when I said I thought all the things happened. But I think Percival just seeing himself in like a vision, and just like didn't really think of it as like a romantic thing in his own like naivety. Um, but as they're still walking and thinking about it, obviously Nansen is still tired. Percival does offer to carry him, but they do make it to the top of the mountain range, which is really cool. Like I really do like how Nakaba does his landscapes, as I was saying earlier. But they were expecting to at least be able to see Leonis by the time they got to the top. But it's like they said earlier, you know, Dalfar is a mountain range, so they can't quite see Leonis yet. And apparently it's going to take 4 days for them to reach the other side, which is kind of a long time. And especially if Nansen is talking about, he may potentially double it by just him being there. It's just like so much time. So we're looking at potentially a week here, which just is a lot. But as you can also see in this panel here, there is that bird. I'm not for sure if this is the same bird, but I'm 99.99% sure this is the same bird because it looks kind of fat. But Sin does notice it, and he chooses not to really say anything about it, which is very interesting in itself. I'm pretty confident this is another familiar just because I feel like this is how the Chaos Knights work. But as I said last chapter, we're just going to have to wait and see. And then right after that, in this unnecessarily epic panel for Percival, he says he has to pee, as well as Donnie. So they run over off to the side to go pee. And through the brush that they're peeing in, they can see a village way off into the distance. And like, you know, it's like the people are waving at them. Except, you know, everybody does note that it's weird and kind of creepy. And then Sin also says that he can sense like a odd magic from it. You know, Percival saying like a weird magical village, and you know, Dinah's like, well, a village is a village. So those two just like bolt off full speed towards the village, which is just like, if any two were going to do it, it would be those two. While they're running off, some random dude runs out and he says like, no, stop, that village is really dangerous, but they're already gone. To which Sin bolts off on his own to try to catch them. This panel's kind of cool because it looks like Sin was kind of moving here. Like Sin had a little bit of speed here, but he tries to run after them, and they do pass through this like portally type thing, which could be the dimensional caves that you will be trapped in that they were talking about earlier. But the hunter does stop Nansen's and Annie from running in there also because, you know, he's like, that's no village at all. It's a den of monsters. So the monsters could be what Sin was talking about earlier, the whole thing where they're like man-eating ogres. So that's a possibility as well. So this sets up the story for a couple of different things. So it definitely is showing that this exact portion of the Dalfar range is going to be more so focused on Donnie, Percival, and Sin, which is really interesting because we could get some more information about Sin while he's just with that small group. As well as we'll probably get to see Percival actually use his sword to fight against the monsters, which would be really interesting to see what he comes up with. I have like no doubt in my mind he's going to have moves based off of how those moves is just how Percival works. So I'm just really pumped up to see what he does. But yeah, this chapter just had a lot in it. There was a lot to unpack here. Now, as I was saying earlier with the stuff with the bride being Guinevere, that's just what I want to go with. I would love to hear what everybody else is kind of thinking here, but I really think that this lady has to be Guinevere or some connection to her, and it has to be the connection to make Sin being Lanta. It's really exciting stuff. If someone has a different theory, as I said, please let me know down below. But the one thing I really don't like about this is it feels like if this arc does go in the direction to where it's, like I said, focused more so on Donnie, Sin, and Percival, that's kind of how it always is. It feels like outside of Nansen's and Annie's like introductory arcs, it feels like the arcs really don't ever focus on them, or they're not really major players in it, such as with Kant, or such as, you know, with, you know, their own introduction. I get it. They haven't been there that long. Before anybody said, I know they haven't been there this long. I know that, you know, this is Annie's like second adventure with the group, or first adventure, you know, second adventure with the group, and this is only Nansen's third. And it's not, the story's not about them, but it just feels like they get put on the back burner a lot, and it feels like it feels like Donnie gets way more like love in this story than they do. I know it's super early for me to say that, super early, not a big deal, but it's just like an observation that I had. Aside from that, I thought the chapter was really dope. Lots of dialogue, probably like a solid 8 chapter just for how much information that we did get and made me really excited for next chapter. So make sure you guys like the video, so subscribe to the channel for more content. Make sure you guys comment down below what you guys are going to think happen next. I'm just really curious to know what you guys think about who this bride potentially could be. And with all that being said, you guys enjoy the rest of your day, and I'll see you all in my next video.